Austria 1, Turkey 2.
What a game!
How was there only 3 goals in the match?
What a game! What a game!
It was extraordinary, Des.
A win for all of Andy Brassell.
I'll tell you what, Brassell. Portugal winning on pens, Turkey threw in a barn burner, England are still alive. It's all coming up you.
What a glorious week, eh?
Yeah.
Indeed. And
Andy
for St
said-
George as well, because he is from modern-day Turkey.
Yeah, now,
true.
if Georgia had done Spain, it'd be a full house, wouldn't it?
It would have.
Difficult to get a full house, but still,
Yeah.
we all hold
Yeah.
our heads very, very
Andy's
high.
seeing the pound signs, aren't you, Andy? Oh, what's that? You need another piece from
He
me,
never
do you?
sees the pound signs, it's the euros and the lira signs he sees.
No, he does it for the love.
True enough.
And
No,
the Euro-
I'm definitely not getting paid in lira.
Yeah.
Euros or US dollars, please.
Okay.
Andy does it for the love. It's just the property empire is just a cherry on top, isn't it? Andy?
You'll have a Swiss franc. Are they still knocking about? I forget now.
Andy, do you like a Swiss franc?
Only secretly.
Have
You
you
have
got-
to be a
Oh.
Patreon to find that out.
Have you got a load of old like currency in like a pot somewhere at home that you can't use anymore?
Do you know what? I have
do.
when I was a student, my old neighbour went out to a certain country in the Middle East around the early noughties.
Yeah.
And he brought me back a banknote with old Saddam on it.
Wow, that's
No
a collector's
way.
item.
How about that?
Wow.
I keep it wrapped in a $1 bill because it's what he would want.
What an insight.
How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, all the way back to Austria, Turkey. It was a brilliant game. You couldn't take your eyes off it. And straight from the off, Turkey scored a bit of a goal, wasn't it?
And that made the game, really.
Yeah.
Because going into this game, I thought, well, there's a pretty clear winner because Austria are tight, organised, focused. They have a more coherent system up until this point than any other team in the tournament,
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah.
And then they get completely kiboshed by a goal in 50 seconds.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that changes everything. What it doesn't affect, though, the way that Turkey deal with it is something that you can't expect.
Yeah.
The level of control that they have in this game, even when they concede the goal to bring it back to 2-1, is something that you couldn't possibly imagine.
Could predict. And
No.
but what's worth pointing out is that although Demirel scored after how many seconds? 50-something seconds?
It was within a minute.
Within a minute.
52, I
Within a
think,
minute,
yeah.
yeah.
Austria still should have scored before that.
Yeah.
They had a chance
Yeah.
right from the kickoff.
Yeah.
They could have scored after 15 seconds.
Yeah, and then they themselves had a corner which evaded everyone, and I thought, blimey, this is
kicking off.
This is why they used to use corner count back in the day. you
Yeah.
know, But it was an extraordinary start, and the way there was a bit of pinball in there, the goalkeeper, the way he kind of palmed it out, it was almost have another go at that.
Yeah.
you know, it was a strange. I understand why he did it,
I respect that effort. Have another go.
but I felt that I would have fancied Jordan Pickford to have just dived at that and smothered it.
Don't mention Pickford in a game like that.
Why not?
Because he doesn't play behind a team that are capable of playing like
That's
that.
not Pickford's fault. And
It's
it
not.
really isn't Pickford's fault.
In many ways, this kind of game is Pickford's natural environment.
Exactly. Pickford was
In
watching
midfield,
this.
maybe.
He's watching it in the England camp going, you see, lads? You see how enjoyable this
Why
is?
can't I have a bit of that? Yeah, it was an incredible game. And Andy's right to point out, because it was billed as, I think we talked about it ourselves, didn't we, earlier in the week? It was billed as the kind of the system versus the individuals.
Yeah.
We pointed out that Turkey had scored some great individual goals in the tournament so far, Guler's being one particular.
When you say individuals, I understand why you say that, but I would actually say more system versus kind of emotional and sort of whimsical play, I suppose.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And what I did find, and I don't know if Andy felt like this as well, is that to me, it became apparent fairly early on that although Austria had ended up having quite a lot of the ball and they did try to play how they have played so far, they seemed a bit leggy. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting them at some point later in the tournament, if they got that far, to start to run out of steam. I felt like they ran out of steam quite early.
But I think that was an emotional blow rather than a physical blow.
Maybe.
Conceding the first goal, because if you look at the way they accelerate in the last 25 minutes to half an hour of the game, it doesn't stand up to that. In isolation, I would agree with that in the first half. But if you look at the game as a whole, I don't think that really bears any weight. But I think the amazing thing that this underlined for people, you know how when you get an outstanding player who changes the way that you think about the game.
Yep.
So say a Luka Modric or a David Silva says, actually, you don't have to be 6'4" to play in central midfield in
Danny
the Premier
Murphy at
League.
Fulham.
For example, yeah, that tells you, I mean, he's kind of on the cusp, but he's deep enough into the Premier League, Danny Murphy, that he can tell you that it's not all about athleticism, for example. Arda Güler outlines that you don't need a 6 foot centre forward to be your outball.
Yeah.
Because he is the outball. He was absolutely outstanding, but outstanding in new and exciting ways that even people who've watched him quite a lot maybe wouldn't have expected. On
one
this
for the
sort of
purists and one for the beards as well, because it was a lot of what he was doing may have gone under the radar, some of it above radar, or on the radar rather.
Yeah.
But he did have a great game of football, and you realise why this young man is being.
Given how fervent the support for him is, and given the club he's at, he could be really be the next superstar.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's funny. I don't think you really moved to Real Madrid to avoid pressure, but actually stepping out of being a superstar teenager in the Turkish Super League, it's probably not such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Actually, you can think, Real Madrid, well, no one expects me to get in the team. I'll just go there and play my football.
I mean,
rather than carrying the hopes of Fenerbahce on your shoulders, it's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a supremely confident young man. I mean, the report suggested that in the Champions League final, when Ancelotti brought on his last substitute, he threw his bib down and walked off. Which, if true, as I believe that's what the report suggested, it's quite something.
But he was great. He was great in the run-in, and it's funny, in any other season where there wasn't an international tournament that he was going to be involved in at the end, there'd be the typical pictures of him sort of, in his unbranded gym gear, going into a cardio suite, going, time to get ready for the new season, up and at him. Yeah. Because he didn't want the season to end, because a lot of his season was affected by injury. But actually, you think, well, he's not played like so many games as these guys, and he's really got the bit between his teeth because he's only just started playing at the place where he's wanted to play for a long time. So he's come into this tournament, and he's getting a bit of that carrot and stick from Montella as well, who dropped him and Kenan Yildiz for the second game. I think probably sensibly to keep them back for the Czechia game, which always looked like the big one in the group. But now you can see. But it's not just the energy; it's the intelligence as well, isn't it? That incredibly well developed game brain at this age. It's kind of like, I know he's a little bit younger, but what we see with Lamine Yamal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not really the pace, as I was saying on OTC the other day. It's not the ability to go past people; it's the ability to judge a pass, which shouldn't be possible at that age.
Which comes a lot later on usually.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he's got the lot.
But they were good, Turkey. I mean, they were really good.
Yeah, they were. And it was fair to say Austria played their part as well. I mean, the Turkey goal was the second fastest in the competition's history after, obviously, that Albania goal against Italy in the group stages. I mean, Austria, when they were drawn against Turkey, I think would have thought, right, we can beat this lot, and they went into the game very, very confident as well. And we saw them doing their stuff, as you said, and the swarming, as they like getting bodies forward, often appearing to have an extra player, all that kind of stuff. But for Turkey to kind of keep their heads and to be able to kind of manage that, I mean, okay, on another day, I understand Austria can win that game or at least take it to extra time. But everybody in that Turkish side played their part. None more so than you would say the goalkeeper, Andy.
It's an unbelievable save.
It's one of the best saves I've ever seen.
And not the only
incredible.
good save. Yeah, the save he made from Arnautovic
Earlier
as well
on,
was a brilliant piece of goalkeeping, straight off his line.
Quick.
If he's a second slower, then that probably goes in. But the focus will be on the save right at the end of the game.
Very, very good. And I think it's almost sacrilegious, but I'm sure a lot of other people were like watching that thinking, Banks against Pele.
Yeah, I mean, it was that type of save from Gunnar.
It's maybe not quite the same, but like in that sort of ballpark, certainly.
I think you've got to talk about it like that, because when Baumgartner, wasn't it, who heads it down?
Yeah.
And when the ball comes in and he goes up for it, you think, oof, here we go. There's a chance here.
And he does everything right.
He does, yeah. He's desperately unlucky, heads it down. And when you head the ball down, it makes it so much more difficult for the goalkeeper to judge that bounce. You've got two things to judge there, if you see what I mean.
That's why you're always coached to do it.
It's a phenomenal save. It is the match-winning save, isn't it? Quite literally, like in the dying seconds, that goes in its extra time, and you would imagine, and it was chaos theory, so why bother? But if you will, for a moment, Austria would have their tails up. They look like they had a little bit more energy. It's a stunning save.
Well, Rangnick said, didn't he? Like if that goes in, we win the game.
Well, because it's also it's not only a technically brilliant save and an amazing, really important time given the context of the game. It's also a heartbreaker of a save.
Oh my goodness!
Because it means that even though Austria get a corner after, they're just heading their hands going, what the fuck have we got to do?
Yeah, well, indeed.
Baumgartner does everything right. It's a good, solid, he doesn't absolutely bullet it, but he heads it down, as you say. And,
99 times out of 100, that goes.
It's a goal. It's a goal. I thought it was a goal. That's for me.
I still think it might be.
That's how you judge a great save. With people out there thinking, there's so many great saves, how do you judge the great ones? What makes a brilliant one better. I'm not a goalkeeping expert, so I can't tell you that. But what I can tell you is if you are watching that in real time and you think that's a goal and it isn't, it's a brilliant save.
The emotional drain of that moment that you bring up, that's quite an interesting point, because of course we saw Christoph Baumgartner at the end, and he was in absolute bits, wasn't he? Of course, he'd had a couple of chances, Austria's best chances, and I think the fact that some of those chances came to him in a headed situation is maybe not what you would have chosen, because he's not that sort of player. He's more of a, I suppose, Lampard drift into the penalty box kind of player. But when he was sobbing away, I did think, well, you can walk home in 20 minutes from here. He plays for RB Leipzig, of course.
He'll definitely forget that.
That's probably makes it harder for him, though. Makes it worse for him.
I should point out that the XG Philosophy, a well-followed account on Twitter,
I'll follow him,
said that the XG on that header, a goalkeeper would only be expected to save the effort 6% of the time. So I said 99 times out of 100. I think we can say
that seems high to me.
94 out of 100 times that would go in, basically.
It's just boffins taking over, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I
mean, just enjoy the save. Just enjoy it.
Well, I think they are enjoying it just through numbers.
They're best friends in numbers.
Yeah, well, he's basically saying, look, you can actually, as close as one can, calculate this, and it actually backs up the importance of the. If he went, well, actually, 50% of the time, a goalkeeper would say, he'd piss off.
Neil Warnock.
Yeah, exactly. But he's behind it all. He's this puppet master.
Seems unlikely.
He does seem unlikely, and that's why it's perhaps more likely.
Yeah, mate, that would be a plot twist I wouldn't expect if Neil Warnock came out with a PhD in applied mathematics and was behind the XG phenomenon.
You visit his place in Newquay.
What a plot twist.
He doesn't call it a house, he calls it a command centre.
the new film by M. Night Shyamalan.
Exactly. It's like those machines in World War II just rattling through all the leagues of the world.
Did Neil Warnock solve the Enigma code?
I'm not going to say that, because that would be very disrespectful to those who did live more.
On the Austria side of the ledger, Andy, can I ask a couple of naive questions?
Please.
One is that, given that they've gone out perhaps around par, given what we would think before the tournament, people wouldn't expect them to win the group, but then when they started to play so well, people thought they might go a bit deeper than they did, so in a weird way it's ended up around par. The two players that weren't there, that to me seemed like they would have been key, David Alaba, just for his experience, and I don't think I can't remember the name of the guy who played left back, but he got subbed off at half time and he wasn't very good. And Alaba would have played a bit further forward for Austria maybe. But anyway, and Xaver Schlager as well, who's really important for their system, right?
Yeah, he is.
And he wasn't available.
I'd like to have a defensive midfielder like that who does the dirty stuff.
He just seems to be really important to Rangnick.
Quite important. Yeah, I mean, 2 ACLs to 2 key players. I mean, it's really unfortunate. It's amazing what they've been able to do despite that. Despite the fact, obviously, we've seen Alaba on social media receiving and presenting birthday cakes with fireworks on the top, etc., etc., etc.
It's his summer as well.
It is.
It's his summer. Very much so.
Exactly.
Don't think you need to do that.
But I think beyond that, the thing that it always looked as if they were lacking, and this is not meant as a knock on Marko Arnautovic, well, maybe it is meant as a knock on Marko Arnautovic.
I think he probably deserves the odd knock.
Is a top class centre forward.
Yeah,
you think that the midfield is money, even without Alaba in defence. And obviously, there's a question mark on where they might play him. But Kevin Danso, I think, has had a really good tournament, give or take, breaking Kylian Mbappe's nose, which wasn't really his fault.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Makes the tournament more interesting.
Well, I think he probably did it for Jan Vertonghen before he thought he's probably having to give a go at him when they knock him out like he did when France scored. So I'll get one in for you, Jan, early.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So, but you said he's had a really good tournament, notwithstanding the idea that he broke Mbappe's nose. I'm trying to work out what your assessment of him breaking Mbappe's nose is.
Andy's a football purist, remember?
Well, he was very apologetic. I'm
I'm
looking at it from Danso's perspective. He was very apologetic about it.
Yeah, sure. I bet in the same way that Cristiano Ronaldo was, he gave a little win because
as about apologetic as a tennis player as if it hits the net and goes over and they win a point.
Or like when we were playing table tennis.
Indeed.
No, it's just to cut off all the nonsense on socials, isn't it?
Well,
because you're getting death threats from the nutters. So
never even acknowledge the nutters.
Yeah.
But back to
talking the two of them.
But back to Austria. I mean, you're right to point out, Luke, about expectations. But the thing is, the way they take to the group, they win the group, which is arguably the group of death. And they play great football. They beat the Dutch in style. Expectations go through. And as I say, when they got Turkey in the next round, they'd have thought, come on, we fancy this. And I would say, they play that again. There's every chance they would have won the game. I think what was terribly disappointing for them is, we've already talked about it, that early goal and the manner of it.
Yes, exactly.
And then even the second goal is a set piece. Now, I'm not saying a set piece goal is of less value, because that is factually incorrect and just bloody stupid. But again, for a team with such an airtight system, they think, right, we're really difficult to break breakdown. We're going to go at them, and they get picked off twice. One in slightly calamitous fashion. They're chasing the game. They score. They have chances. Great save from the goalkeeper. I think they'll go away. It won't be. I hope they don't blame themselves, but I just think it's one of those desperately unlucky ones.
Yeah.
When the footballing gods have not smiled on you, and it'll always be, but what if we'd
That's
got
tournament
through?
football, right?
Well, indeed. And what if they got through and then played a side they'd already beaten?
Yeah.
And I think that if you look around, we talk about England have got a chance. Well, because England have played poorly, we think, well, we've got a chance because we're not on that half of the draw. But you look at now, we'll get to the Netherlands in the second half. They'll be thinking, bloody hell, lads. Here we go. Exactly. But Switzerland will think that, and Austria would have thought that right up until last.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up Alaba and Schlager, because I think they were brilliant in the group stage, of course. Last night, for the first time, and this is how it works, right? You go into tournaments, you look at teams and you think, the players they've got missing, are they going to suffer from that? The answer for Austria in the group stage was no, they haven't suffered from that. But when this stuff starts to happen, you start thinking Alaba's experience, like his quality.
Maybe Schlager sits on...
Yeah, Schlager's importance to the system. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it starts to become very quickly, very stark who's missing.
But I think you can project what might have happened looking back at the game. On the other hand, you look from the Turkish perspective, you look at Merih Demiral, who wouldn't have been
bloke,
who wouldn't have been in the 11 if Ozan Kabak hadn't tore his ACL in the friendly against Italy just before the tournament.
It's partly because he's been chased out of Europe for his terrible views. Is that fair? Yeah, there you go. Andy's saying nothing. We take that as acquiescence.
I think it is probably a good result though for Manchester United fans, because if Austria had won the tournament under Ralph Rangnick, it would have just put more banter on them.
It's true, but on the other side of it,
their banter plate is full at the moment.
Yeah, I love it.
There's a waterfall in the stadium, Man United.
Yeah.
Ralph Rangnick's doing well, Man United.
Yeah. Oh, what's that? You're about to overpay for about 4 Turkish players you don't need, Man United. That's what's going to happen.
Gareth Southgate's trying to get Jadon Sancho into the England squad late doors, Man United. Just everything. Ralph Rangnick said after the game, he said, the 4 games we played were very entertaining, very intense. I have seen other games in this tournament where it was difficult to stay awake, and that was not the case with ours. All right, mate.
Yeah, I think he's fair. That's fair, though. I agree. They've made a brilliant contribution. It's sickening for them. They beat Turkey so heavily earlier in the season as well, which will be playing on his mind.
6-1.
Yeah, and they have made an amazing contribution. The problem is, it will probably be forgotten about because of how early they've gone out.
Yeah.
If they'd gone through, like you say, their tails are up against Netherlands, they get through that somehow, they're semi-finalists. That's a big story.
Yeah.
This ain't a big story.
No, and I think that's it. I think with Austria, I think even if they got to the quarter-final, that would have been a little bit more something to hang your hat on.
And it's a step further than the last Euros as well.
Exactly,
in which
Andy.
they went out in a game that they could have won as well.
Totally, yeah. But it is ultimately a positive tournament for Austria, and I think Rangnick and his methods have been vindicated with this side.
And at least he doesn't have to go and manage Bayern at the end of the tournament.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
And at least it's a short walk home for him as well, Andy. But I think, they should stick with him. I don't know what the conversations are and if Rangnick wants to move on or whatever. But
they will.
The Austrian.
He's signed again.
There you go. So
to stay.
He had a tearful conversation last night with Marco Materazzi, who said, "Please don't leave Switzerland with Rafa Benitez," and so they're going to stick with him.
Good. Well, but it's something for them to build on and be inspired from, and so on. But Turkey, though, Andy, with Vincenzo Montella at the helm, he said that the 6-1 against Austria was a stain on his career. He said that's been wiped away now. He said, I saw a lot of Turkish heart in this performance.
That's the real quiz. That's the real quiz.
And they're still alive, and
they're at home in Berlin.
Indeed, and their army of supporters give them a great chance. Whoever it may be, they play.
Now you can talk about the friendlies.
I say whoever it may be. We know who they are playing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Whoever they might play.
Exactly. That's yes.
Yeah, and however far they might get. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But
Germany-Turkey final, Andy.
Maybe
that would be massive.
Can you imagine? The thing is, of course, if you talked about the friendly defeat where they lost to Austria, going back a couple of months, going back 3 months or whatever, 3.5 months. But the real quiz was, of course, Kenan Yıldız's debut, where they beat Germany in Berlin.
Yeah,
and the atmosphere in that was unbelievable.
They've brought. It's worth pointing out before we move on. They have brought the atmosphere in a big way, and
again, short walk from the stadium.
Yeah.
But the Turkish travel really well. I mean, the Turkish diaspora is very, very influential. Pretty much wherever it goes. I mean, producer Rory was saying North London last night, the fireworks were going off and everything.
But particularly in Germany,
fine.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. Well,
good on them. It's a great result for them.
If they were to get to the final against Germany, it would be very stereotypical of the Germans to find revenge where it really was served up best. All right, everybody. After the second half, we're going to be talking about that Netherlands victory against Romania. We've got a little bit of England chat as well. Oh, and the Copa America. See you in a moment.
Aguanta Caramusi, ¿cómo puede? Caramusi abrió la cancha otra vez con Cabrejas, el centro al área. Le queda Caramusi, la volea. ¡Gol! ¡Golazo!
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody.
Bad Bunny there.
T-Pain.
An Argentinian commentator leaving on the auto-tune.
They should do it more.
Should happen more often. Tildesley should have done
I'd love to
that.
be a Clive doing
Imagine if
that.
he went out on ITV doing a bit of that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would have been...
Like Pete Donaldson's last ever thing on Absolute Radio.
Yeah.
It's a big burp, wasn't it? Big burp into the mic. That was it. See you later.
I know, eh? Lucky not to get a lawsuit, quite frankly.
Yeah. He still might.
He might do. And that's just from us. Romania 0. Netherlands 3. Netherlands reached the quarterfinals for the first time in 16 years in the European Championships. It was pretty comprehensive stuff from those oranges, Luke Moore.
Yeah, they're very good. It was a pretty convincing performance, I felt. There was an element of it where it took him a little bit of time to get going, and then obviously Cody Gakpo does what he does. And ever since I've said that sometimes I feel like him coming off the left and shifting onto his right foot every time is a little bit predictable, he has not stopped scoring goals.
No, he hasn't.
And I think it's going to be, I mean, to not to digress too much, but I think it's going to be very interesting actually to see how he's employed by Arne Slot next season, because that to me looks like the most effective position from him. And I understand for different injury reasons, Liverpool weren't perhaps able to feel like they could do that under Klopp as much. He seems to me, I mean, if you look at the running Liverpool had, I think they were playing Luis Diaz off the left quite a lot. He seems like a much better option, Gakpo, to me. I thought this performance by him, bearing in mind that he has a goal and an assist and really runs the show. And he was very, very unfortunate not to score a fucking amazing goal as well. I thought that was probably the best individual performance of the Euros.
What would you have had on him as a tournament top scorer?
Yeah, it'd be big odds, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But he's been fantastic. And I'd also spare a thought for Daniel Malin as well, who I thought, although in the Austria game he scored no goal, missed a big chance. This is going to sound a bit counterintuitive what I'm about to say here, because it's a bit like, apart from that, how was the theatre, Mrs. Lincoln? He was really good in that game. I actually thought he was game. He was really positive. He worked really hard. And I was really pleased for him to get a couple of goals here, chiefly because I think he deserved them.
Yeah.
And chiefly because also, I think a lot of the chat around Netherlands recently, and the BBC did a thing on it as well, even ahead of this game, is that what are they doing in terms of a centre forward? They've got such a great tradition of having amazing Dutch forwards. And at the moment, you've got Depay there who...
But they haven't had one for a little while, though.
Sure, but traditionally they have. If you think of Van Persie, Van Nistelrooy,
we can go through the names.
But yeah, Weghorst. Well, that's the thing, though. That's the thing.
Van
At the
Hooijdonk.
moment, you've got. At the moment,
Which one?
Yeah, Van Hooijdonk kicking off when he spent half his time on strike as a player. It was a little bit rich in my view, but because he was actually kicking off at how bad Netherlands were. It's like, mate, when things went tough for you, you fucked off.
Yeah, but this is the thing, though, in the Netherlands. Andy often rightly points out that when we could be a bit down on ourselves as England fans and English people, so in this country, the thing is we beat ourselves up and we think that everybody gets it spot on with punditry. In the Netherlands, in particular, they go on and on about certain styles. I mean, Ronald Koeman was asked about their game. I forget which one it was, maybe against Austria, and they said, would that game have hurt Johan Cruyff's eyes? And it's just like, I said, come on, and this is one of the things. Like with England, we bemoan the lack of identity or the negative identity of sitting deep and all that kind of stuff. With the Netherlands, of course, a rich footballing history and have produced some of the best teams that we've ever seen. Well, sometimes that can be a noose around your neck as well.
Like philosophy is religion, almost.
It is, yeah, absolutely. It gets in the way.
I think it's interesting when we've heard this tournament from Kane and Rice and Bellingham on, maybe former players should know a little, maybe behave themselves and like wind their necks in and be a little bit more supportive of us. I mean, obviously, we know everyone in the Dutch squad speaks excellent English, and a lot of them are consumers of English language media. They must be sitting in their hotel like laughing at that, thinking, have you met Rafael van der Vaart?
Yeah, but they also...
Seriously? Come on.
Yeah, but they also have Ronald Koeman as manager, and he doesn't suffer fools gladly.
No.
And what Koeman could bring out the bag, which he did, was he can say, well, obviously having played under Cruyff, Do you know what I mean? Having led the Netherlands to...
He's part of that tradition, isn't he? In his own way?
Well, he is, yeah. And I think people may think... I mean, Koeman is... I think he's done pretty well as Netherlands coach, by and large, I would say.
I think there's quite a big definition between first part of Koeman and second part of Koeman.
Okay.
And maybe this is a bit where the worm turns. I don't
Possibly.
know. Because the thing is, when he was in charge the first time, they were one of the favourites for Euro 2020. They absolutely were one of the favourites. Then COVID happens. The tournament gets delayed a year. He gets offered his dream job at Barcelona and thinks, well, I ain't going to get it offered at any other time.
Bit of a shame for them that happened.
Let's take it. And it's never been quite the same since when he's come back, partly because of the players, partly because there's a spell in between the two Koeman spells where it doesn't really go that well. And it doesn't look like an all-time great Netherlands side to a lot of people. And your point about centre forwards, I think that's a really important one, Luke, because this is the first game in this Euros, and I can't pay their performance a higher compliment than this, and the cohesion of it a higher compliment than
I know
this.
what you're going to say.
This is the first game in the tournament where it's felt like they haven't needed Weghorst.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Memphis was really good.
He was great.
He was really good.
And the thing is, sometimes with Memphis, though, and I know he's your favourite player of all time, Andy, so I'll be gentle here, is that if you look at, say, for example, the France game, which was a stinker, he just looks like he doesn't want to be there. And you sometimes think, is he capable of occupying top quality centre-backs in that way? Because he wants to drop off, he wants to drift out wide. I mean, against Romania, he drifted out wide quite a lot. But it did click really well. And the point I was actually going to finish on making, read the forwards of Holland, which is quite an interesting one, I think, is that if you put Memphis and Wout Weghorst together, you've basically got the perfect centre-forward.
But if you're English, like Dutch people are putting soap in their eyes at that.
They are, but Marcus has already addressed that. I mean, maybe that's part of the problem. You talked about philosophy as religion. That's part of the problem. My point would just be, if you look at Weghorst and break him down to his component parts, I can see why Koeman likes to use him. And the reason he likes to use him, for people out there who don't care enough to think about this kind of stuff and aren't that boring, the ball sticks to him. He does the really basic stuff well. He's strong. He's good in the air. He makes intelligent but quite basic runs which actually work, and they've been in football for years for a reason, and that's everything that Depay doesn't do. And Depay does all the complicated stuff well.
When he has demonstrably pulled out moments, Argentina in the last World Cup in the group stages.
That's where
made a contribution.
That's where Gakpo helps you, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because
are you going Gakpo rather than Gakpo?
No, but that's isn't that a game you play with a little beanbag?
Do you know what? I'm glad you said that. Because
look, if you want to talk about the greats and talk about Ruud Gullit, you go for it.
No, you're right, because Louis van Gaal, it's a kind of sound, isn't it?
And Frank Rijkaard.
I didn't go for the full.
Unbelievable. No, but you either go or G, and with Gakpo, we've gone with the G. With Van Gaal, we had all that kind of stuff.
I think because he's physically more imposing.
Yes.
If you get the front three right, actually that removes the need to use Weghorst. If you're talking about a fixed point centre forward, then maybe Memphis, you're thinking, I don't know about that. But if you're talking about a more mobile front line, him as a centre forward can work because it has worked for his clubs for several years, and he's turned up and scored big goals in big games.
Yeah, and I think this was a bit of a statement win and performance from the Netherlands. I mean, Koeman, in typical Koeman fashion, did say there's much room for improvement. There was a big gap between first goal and second goal, and said a few other things. But again, if you look at the side that started, it's a decent backline.
And they defended better.
Yeah, they did defend better.
Which has made a difference, because for the good defenders they've got, they have defended shambolically so far in this tournament.
Which has been a bit of an odd thing, considering some of the names back there.
Not really, I don't think, because...
Everything clicked though, Andy, yesterday.
It did, and I think if there was a game that you were going to get away without having like a sort of defensive structure in midfield, this was probably it. Yeah. Because there is a class gap between them and Romania aren't a relentlessly offensive side. So I think where they've really lacked so far in this tournament, the Dutch, you forget all the players that they've lost from midfield. Frankie de Jong,
well, it's a big loss.
Koop Miners, Martin de Roon, who's that sort of stabilising influence for Atalanta. And I do kind of think with the Netherlands, like there's two ways of looking at this game. You either look at it and you think, okay, they're growing into the tournament, or there's the other way of looking at it, which is, right, okay, when they play decent opposition, they're going to get ripped to bits again.
But there's so many teams like that. There's so many in this tournament. There's been so many teams who've got question marks over them. Good teams, even now. And I think on the Romania side of it, I would just say they've had a pretty good summer. I mean, they've won the group.
Agreed. Yeah.
They had a great result against Ukraine. Started off really well.
Yeah.
Some great goals in that game. Beat them heavily, of course. Then they go up against Belgium, which is a tough game to play second. Second is a key game, the second game in that group situation, which we'll come on to with the US in a minute. And then they hold Slovakia pretty well. And Slovakia looked like they had a bit of capability. And I'm not just saying that because of England, but they were able to go toe to toe with England, who had a team full of big players. And then they get paired up against the Dutch, who just hit their straps at the right moment.
Yeah.
So they've not disgraced themselves at all, Romania.
No, they've had a good tournament, and I mean the scenes that we saw with their fans, who have been great, travelled in numbers, and have been a great credit to themselves. You see them with the players sort of stood in front of them, and it was
that reaction is very indicative.
It really is,
yeah.
and the players were stood there for a fair while, and the Romanian fans, it wasn't just they were applauding. Some of them were like bouncing. Do you know what I mean? Like there was, if you'd have looked, if you'd have just squinted your eyes, you might have thought, have they gone through here? You saw the huge appreciation from those supporters. Perhaps some of whom will remember far better times for the Romanian national side. I mean, the chap, Ion Ionescu, who's in charge, his father is quite a name, to say the least, in Romanian football, of course. He was manager when they were at 94 and 96, perhaps, as well. Definitely 94.
Has Yanis Hadji got a famous dad?
Not sure. You need to Google that one.
It's funny. I remember a bit when he was down injured yesterday, of course, like when he got the hairnet applied.
Yeah.
And all the Romanian
when he turned
fans,
into a load of onions.
Yeah. And all the Romanians are going, Hadji. Yeah. And you're like sat on the floor going, I've got a headache, and they're chanting for my dad.
Yeah. and by the way, my dad is the worst
Easy.
bloke.
There's a lot of bad blokes at the moment in Europe.
There are. But Georgie Hadji's a complicated character.
To say he's the worst one.
Complicated character.
Let's just be thankful.
Come on, he's nowhere near. Hadji's all right.
Let's be thankful he's not involved in politics. That we know of.
At the moment.
Yeah. There's always time.
It's not. I mean, Yanis
there's always
Hadji,
time to ruin your legacy completely.
Because Yanis Hadji, look, he is playing for his national team in a tournament, so it's not like the end of the world. But he's playing for Alaves, right? So he's not reaching the heights of his dad, which to me
but
sometimes
that's not possible.
Quite, but it's not as bad as Dennis Bergkamp's son playing for Bromley, but it is in the same kind of area, and you feel sorry for him because you think the pressure's incredible, and actually what you've been able to achieve in your career to get to this point, given who your dad is. Because, of course, you're going to get all the genetic advantages, but you're also going to get an incredible amount of pressure in a country like Romania. I mean, Hadji's an incredible figure there.
Yeah.
And so I felt the same when I heard that chant. I thought, it's what a difficult life he must have.
Well, indeed, yeah. I mean, I think he has been playing for Alaves, but he'll probably be off back to Rangers because he was only on loan there.
It's a funny thing to me how he's never quite stuck anywhere, because there's loads of ability, and we saw quite a lot of it yesterday, actually. I thought
plays in the same position on the left as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I mean, going back to Romania though, and their fans and Ion Ionescu, the manager, I thought it was a great moment because, as I say, they've had very good teams in the past. I mean, they've never, gone sort of really deep in tournaments. We've seen them in quarterfinals and second rounds before.
What they do in '98?
They were second round in '98. They dyed their hair and then went out to Croatia, I believe.
That's right.
So this felt like a real achievement. Perhaps a bit of relief as well, maybe. I don't know if the relief's the right word, but it was certainly huge appreciation of what they've done. And
I think relief kind of is the right
maybe
word.
They didn't disgrace themselves. I mean, a Romanian mate of mine was saying, like, as long as we don't embarrass ourselves. And I think they've probably overachieved here, if you think about it. And
I'd agree with that.
The manager was saying, right, we've now got to kick on. Let's invest in the youth. Let's use this as a platform to build, because they have a bit of pedigree in that country. They are better than what they've shown in recent
not qualifying for a World Cup since '98 is crazy.
It is, yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, '94 they got to the quarterfinal that you mentioned. I mean, didn't qualify for the last Euros either. So I mean,
and you don't want to drift. You don't want to become like Hungary have been, for example. Oh well, but it was only 5 decades ago, and it was only 8 decades ago. But I mean, in a similar way, like bloody England and winning the tournament. But let's not go there yet. But it is that, and you've got to make sure that you make the most of these moments and build these little platforms and build on the little victories, and hopefully they will. But the reception, as I say, in the stadium was really great to see, and the reception to change tack to one of the so-called smaller nations as well. Georgia, did you see their reception they got when they came home with open top bus? Now I know it's different because it's their first major tournament.
Did you see the reception the president got when he came to meet them?
What was that one?
Is he unpopular?
A little.
Is he? I don't want to get into Georgian politics, Andy. No. We've got enough of our own this week.
Just for the patrons.
But the amount of people who turned out for that is incredible, and it goes to show. We were talking about this a week or two ago, weren't we? Saying that different expectation. Different nations have different expectations, and it's up to them to decide up to the fans really to decide whether they've exceeded those expectations or not. It's not patronising for us to say, "Well done, Georgia." Look at the fans' response.
Well, I think as well as there's something about playing a big name in a knockout match, and if you're beaten fairly comprehensively, but you've given it a good go,
and you've had a moment like they scored.
Indeed, yeah. So Romania have had the moment, and Georgia have beaten by Spain. You can be forgiven for that. Beaten by a Netherlands side who, as I say, it seemed to sort of click. You compare that to poor old Scotland.
Yeah,
right. I mean, Scotland. A lot of people pissed off with Clark. A lot of people just like, for crying out loud, when are we ever going to have some sort of moment or some kind
because there's absolutely no reason they can't replicate what Romania or Georgia have done.
Indeed, and it's absolutely true. So yeah, these things are for the countries involved to be cherished, and you can hold your head up high and hopefully build from it. And on that note, we go to England. I mean, it's. From an England point of view, this would be a positive. You hate framing it like that, but from a neutral and certainly, otherwise known as a Swiss point of view,
same thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's unnecessary, isn't it, Andy? That's
Get the digs at the head of the game.
I know. Granit Xhaka's fitness is uncertain. With
Marcus, we're going to have to work really hard over the next week or so, or next few days, to really generate some proper
negative energy,
some angles towards Switzerland. You've got one here. Let's use it.
Granit Xhaka is, of course, having an MRI scan on a potential adductor injury. And all joking aside, like, he has the way he's played this season, and it's not
season of his life,
best season of his career for sure.
You want him to play,
and he's been brilliant in the early part of the European Championship as well. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is not to say he's as good as Bellingham or Kane, but I think him missing this game would be bigger than Bellingham or Kane missing for England.
That's how important he is.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, arguably bigger,
for
actually. One could argue. On the injury front, Kieran Trippier and John Stones have said they expect to be fit to play against Switzerland.
I want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want Stones to be fit, of course, because Gay's unavailable. But I think the best thing, I mean this with love, it's not going to sound like I do.
You can phrase it differently and say you hope Gareth picks another player instead of him.
I hope Gareth picks another player instead of him.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Kieran Trippier and me.
It's a shame. I mean, Trippier, if you analyse his performance against Slovakia, like really high up the pitch, trying to stretch it, and Slovakia just like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's so predictable to play against because they know he's going to cut back.
He's
the one time that he actually opened his body on the left and squared it was when Foden scored, but Foden didn't bloody stay on side.
But I guess the main thing with Trippier really is the fact that he's brought in as the safe option.
Yes.
The reason for not really dealing with the left back issue that they've got. But he's never a safe option because he's had a very poor season at club level by his standards. Wasn't really fit for the last couple of months of it. Only came back like 10 minutes before the end of the season. And then you stick him in there and expect him to be...
He plays every game.
I mean, he's look,
important. It's difficult. I think he's been put in a difficult position by Southgate, to be honest.
Yeah, and he has
to be respected for doing his best out of position.
Yeah.
To paraphrase Luke with regards to Ashley Young last season, Kieran Trippier is a faithful old dog. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has been
50-odd caps, an amazing career.
He's been
good guy in the dressing room,
exactly. And do you know what? If England were to say play a right wing back, him or Trent are great options there. If Walker was to get injured and they move Trippier, he's a very.
Well, sometimes they would move Walker to the right of a back three. Anyway.
Indeed, whatever they may do, his place in the England squad is very, very understandable. But there's enough evidence now with these games to say it's not really working. Now, what do England do? Luke Shaw, even if he is available,
taking him has been mad. I don't think we can get away
it's
from
a
that.
gamble.
Really.
The only way it isn't mad is if he somehow gets an hour against Switzerland, plays well, and then they switch Saka to left back and take him off again or whatever, and he does well.
Even picking him when he's not played for months.
But who else was there?
Well, I suppose people might say Tyrick Mitchell would be.
And that's a gamble as well.
Well, it is, but I mean, it's all very well with hindsight, but we've got what we've got now. And one player who has been playing left back a fair bit is Joe Gomez.
Yeah.
And speaking to a few Liverpool fans, most notably friend of the Ramble Lawrence McKenna, was saying like, he'd do a better job than Trippier.
Yeah, I would not be unhappy with that.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong, Joe Gomez is not suddenly going to turn into Paolo Maldini, but he's an incredibly reliable player who's played along the back line, etc., etc. I just think that one of the problems is I suspect Southgate will still go with the back four, despite what Yakin said about Italy, which should, bring us,
that could be a bluff anyway.
No, but he's talking about Italy. He's not talking about England.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'd quite like England to play back three, but I don't think they will. So we'll park that there.
Also, can we please give Joe Gomez his proper title? The Catford Cannavaro.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Exactly.
Nice.
You're right to say that, Andy. But if he is going to go for a back four, we expect it would be Konza coming in over Gay. Again, I would
deserves to, I think.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't be unhappy with Gomez. You know, he has played for England with Stones at the back, although a long time ago now. So I doubt that if you have a left-sided centre-half come in, even though Konza, you know, he will be playing on the left of the two. Do you put another one in there at left back? I don't think he'd do that. I think, again, we know he likes safety first. So to have two different players,
the problem is it's starting to look a bit like we're about to find out where the end of the road is in terms of careers for Walker and Trippier against Switzerland in a knockout game of the Euros. Yeah. Because both those players were bad against Slovakia, and England got away with it, whichever way you want to slice it. And I said, didn't I, after the game, that, you know, England won, and we need to remember that, and it's not like Iceland for all the obvious reasons. But in a situation where you're going to be playing better teams basically every game, you can't keep getting away from it.
So if it was you, and let's go with the chat that it's going to be a back four, you'd have obviously from right to left.
I'd play Trent Alexander-Arnold right back, and I'd play Joe Gomez left back.
And Konza with Stones,
assuming that Shaw isn't fit.
I agree.
Well, there's no other option. I mean, who else are you going to play there?
No, I'm just
Lewis Dunk.
But this is the point I'm saying, is that I don't think Southgate will make two changes to the back line.
No, I agree with you.
I'm not saying I agree with that. I just think that will happen.
No, I think you're right, Marcus. I also agree with Luke that if you're playing this,
did you read that, Marcus?
Frame it. Yeah. If you're playing that sort of lopsided back four where you have a more defensive left back, which is inevitably what Joe Gomez would be, Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, because
that is
because you then shift the other side, don't you?
Yes.
Because he wants an overlapper with Foden. Well, as I've said before, stick Anthony Gordon out there. You don't need someone to overlap because he'll beat his man anyway. Yeah. So these are the changes that really need to happen. You know, you can. I expect Mainu to start, and I think he deserves that. Yeah,
agreed.
Whether you. It is a big decision. I've said, you know, we've been talking about this. I said, does he rest Bellingham? Well, it's just as well he didn't, because he pulled it out the fire for us with what could turn out to be one of the most memorable, important goals in English footballing history.
Forgotten about.
Or kind of.
Has Bellingham said himself?
Yeah, or it could be, it just prolonged the agony. You know, you've got two pathways there. Let's hope it's the former, but. For me, it's like I've said before, I'd have Gordon on that.
We all would.
Side. Or
some of us have been saying it for months.
Or you stick Saka out there, and some people would say, no, you shouldn't do that, and so on. Just in the name of bloody balance. But I suspect that he has to choose who you're going to play on that right side. Is it Saka or is it Foden? And interestingly, a number of the writers on Sky Sports were given, you know, what would your 11 be in Slovakia? And there was, I don't know, 5-6 of them. None of them had Foden in their starting 11. And that's the big decision. I'm not saying I would drop Foden. To be quite frank, I'm glad I'm not the England manager. But I don't think to try and shoehorn everybody in. It's just.
He's not going to.
No, you're right.
He's not going to. He's not going to do that.
No,
that's the frustrating thing about it.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we shall have to wait and see. But hopefully, though, one thing that we can say is that Ed Sheeran delivering a private concert to the England camp ahead of that game will give him a bit of a G.
Now, I might have been misled by the stills from this, but it very much looked like a tracksuited Harry Kane was being his hype man.
Nice. Flavor Flav.
Yeah.
They have a clock around his neck. That'd be brilliant. I mean, because
wouldn't it?
I've got no particular beef with Ed Sheeran. I don't like the gatekeeping aspect.
Should hear what he says about you, mate.
Saying that his music's crap or whatever, but I think what he's achieved in his career is amazing. But when I first saw this news, I can't deny that my instinct was that's the last thing they need.
Who would you choose?
Because they're already playing so fucking slow. Yeah. What do you want? Who's next? James Blunt. Do you know what I mean? You need. If anything, get.
Surely,
get Childish Gambino in there.
Now you're talking. Now you are talking. No, it's too small a stage for him. He needs to be.
He does.
I'd say closing ceremony or opening.
Big time.
I think. Do you know who would have loved the gig? And I'm glad Robbie Williams.
Oh God.
Although the money probably wasn't right. Although give it to Williams, it'll piss the players off and it'll G him up somehow. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
Who's next? James Corden doing carpool karaoke with him.
If that happens.
Crash the car.
I'm supporting Switzerland.
Crash the fucking car.
I think it's
I don't care who's in it. It's put really Foden, Bellingham and Kane in the car, Corden driving it and crash it.
Worth it.
I think it's really interesting.
Drive it into the Alps.
that idea of persuasion and inspiration for footballers. I found out just the other day, actually, because I'd always thought that Jamal Musiala was persuaded to play for Germany rather than England by Jogi Löw. And to an extent, that's true. Like Gareth Southgate, I don't think made any proactive steps to get Jamal Musiala. Whereas
Wanker.
Whereas Jogi Löw visited him loads at Bayern, took him out for dinner.
It's easier for Love to visit him at Bayern.
Explain what his role would be in the team. Yeah, it's like, I'm going to take you to a really nice restaurant. Yeah, there's one just in the press room here at Bayern.
Turns out Gareth Southgate's offer for him to hold the back, sit in front of the back four next to Conor Gallagher wasn't that good?
Come on.
But no, what he actually did, and this is the ultimate power move from Oliver Bierhoff, of all people, who of course has a management position within the Germany national team. He's got some connections at the Golden State Warriors, and he knows that Musiala is really obsessed with NBA. So he got Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson to all record this video going, "Hey man, we're a really big fan. We love you too. You should play for Germany."
Really?
Like, I don't know how he pulled that off, but that is a power move.
Andy, I don't want Southgate at the FA involved in such dirty tactics.
I don't either.
They can have it.
Are we not gentlemen here?
Exactly.
What have we learned from the Ed Sheeran story? What we've actually learned is that no one is immune. And what I mean by that is we all know, don't we, that there's no summer event that can't be made worse by some fucking wanker with an acoustic guitar turning up. And this, whether it's a bonfire or a music festival or whatever, England players themselves aren't even immune.
Eddie Sheeran might listen to this podcast for all you know.
I've got no beef with him.
You just called him a wanker.
I didn't. I said it was cleverer than that.
Okay.
I didn't. I said at the stop of this, I've got no problem whatsoever. I think he's amazing for what he does, and what he's achieved is fantastic.
Give yourself a gold star.
I don't want him to turn up now, for example, with an acoustic guitar.
Well,
Do you have Liam G in there?
Now you're talking.
He'd just abuse them all. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, he would get a reaction, Andy.
Yeah, get him in there after they've been knocked out.
It's an anti-Southgate move, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
It's a bit. Marcus, what's the big story of the day?
Something we can all get behind.
Here we go.
Of course, we know that Tom Heaton is currently England's training goalkeeper.
And what a job he's doing.
What a job he's
We're
doing.
not conceding many, are we?
The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Reportedly just signed a new one-year contract with Manchester United. Thanks very much.
What a summer for big Tommy Heats.
And Ineos have had a lot of heat. Well, I'll tell you something. They've cooled it down a little bit there.
Yeah. But I mean,
despite the heat on being on.
Any news on how many season tickets that's sold?
One more. I'll see you there, everybody.
I mean, the real question is, have they replaced Huddleston yet?
No. Well, exactly.
I don't think they can, Andy.
By the way, when they because he announced his retirement this week, right?
Yeah.
And there was a couple of video montages doing around on Twitter.
Oh, Tommy Huddleston.
I know everyone knows this anyway, but it does bear repeating. We have a responsibility on the show where we've got a reasonable amount of listeners to say the technique on the man. I mean, he couldn't get around the pitch. Let's make that absolutely clear at the top level. But the technique on the guy was
he'll light
amazing.
up pitches around the country or wherever he decides to do next if he wants to play a bit of Saturday morning football.
Oh, my goodness me.
But for crying out loud, give it to feet.
Yeah, give it to feet big time.
Give it to feet. Right, we promised a bit of Copper America chat, and that's what we're going to do now. The group stages have finished. The hosts, who are the United States of America, are out. They finished third in their group, and that's not good enough in that tournament. Get yourselves in the Euros. You might do better. They finished third in the group. They lost 1-0 to Marcelo Bielsa's Uruguay in their final game. This was this is not breaking news, as everybody will be aware.
I mean, they did lean into the South Americanness of the tournament by complaining a lot about the referee and getting involved in disputes with the officials.
Christian Pulisic was very much at the helm of that. He was seen. He looked like he was seen telling the officials to join in with the Uruguay celebrations at full time.
I mean, did the ref refuse to shake his hand before or after?
I think it was after that.
Right.
Well, based on the footage I saw, I think it was after that.
I mean, I think they do have cause for complaint. There'd been some tight decisions and whatnot, but one that seemed pretty bad was the referee at one point. He gives a yellow card to a US player and then plays advantage with the card in his hand, which is not right. If you're going to, you let the play flow, and when the play stops...
But he doesn't play advantage.
No.
The Uruguay player stops the ball and takes it quick. The referee, I think the referee is allowed to decide whether a free kick can be taken quickly or not.
Okay.
It's not an advantage.
Right.
He blows the whistle. The Uruguay guy gets the ball, stops it, and takes it quick.
So was he late with the yellow card?
I think the yellow card thing is possibly problematic, but it's not correct to suggest it was also an advantage because it wasn't.
Right. Okay.
So I don't.
I'm just thinking, did he give the yellow card while play?
It's possible.
Well, the game was going on.
Yeah, if he gives the yellow card while play's going on, I mean,
that's wild.
That shows you.
But the story of this, the story of this group, though, and then lots of people are talking about Greg Berhalter and whether he deserves to stand his job or not, and that's for finer minds than mine. But if you're talking about the group stage specifically in this tournament, when you've got a whipping boy in the group, which Bolivia turned out to be, it becomes super important. As I said earlier, actually, on the second game in the tournament in the group is really important. Now, United States opened the tournament by beating Bolivia, right? And they beat them fairly comprehensively, and that's fine. The second game is a bit of a crazy game. They play Panama. For those people who haven't been following this, they play Panama, and from nowhere, Timothy Weah basically punches a Panamanian player in the back of the head. It gets VAR'd. It gets upgraded from a yellow to a red, and he gets sent off after 18 minutes, right? Even then, the United States go and score, and Fuller and Balogun scores a fucking brilliant goal, which is obviously he's more than capable of doing, and but they can't hold on to it, and they end up losing the game, and then it's, I mean, what's quite interesting, I suppose. I was going to say funny then, but it's probably not funny if you're American.
They laugh at us.
It was fucking funny, actually, what happened. The lengths that Panama went to see that result out. So they scored their what turned out to be the winning goal with about 10 minutes left. And then they just get the book out. Every single dirty trick you can think of, right? And then
stick it in the channels.
Adalberto Carrasquilla gets sent off. I mean, it was one of the worst quote-unquote challenges. Have you seen it?
It's take one for the team.
It's one of the worst challenges you've ever seen. Pulisic is away.
Yeah.
He's nowhere near him. And Carrasquilla just kicks the absolute shit out of him, takes a straight red 2 minutes from the end, slows the game down.
Yep.
They see the game out. And just when they thought they couldn't get any worse in terms of dealing with players who were playing on the very limit of the law, who do they play in the final game? Uruguay. It's a narrow one. There's a really, really fine offside decision that goes against the United States.
Yep.
The goal stands. But I would say, here's what I would say. The USA were at home with the top-ranked team in that group, believe it or not. They're ranked 11th by FIFA, way above Bolivia, way above Panama, or even above Uruguay. And for them to go out in their home tournament in that way, having won only 1 out of 3 and losing to Panama, look, I give Berhalter a pass because of the way Weah acted. I mean, what are you going to do? All your preparation, you've got to look at it in the round. All your preparation for the game is gone. And how you react to it is how you react to it. And they did initially react to it well. But I don't think you can blame Berhalter for one of his players to start to punch someone in the back of the head in the middle of a game.
I'm not blaming him for that.
And so the Uruguay game in the end was always going to be a tough ask, given that they've won both their early games, and they'll probably go on to do okay.
Well, I mean, I think the important thing now is that Uruguay, after last night's results, Uruguay are playing Brazil in the quarters. And talking of disciplinary fun and games, Vinicius is suspended for yellow card accumulation.
That's right, yeah.
And that side of the draw, we talk about the size of the draw in the Euros. Argentina will be quite happy in the side of the draw there. They've got Ecuador, and then they'll play the winner of Venezuela and Canada. Something that all Americans can get behind is that Canada are still in the tournament. so band together there. Venezuela have been brilliant, by the way. 3 wins out of 3. Salomon Rondon been man of the match, apparently, in all 3 of the games.
Someone called Benitez again.
Yeah, get him in there. But the winner of Uruguay-Brazil will play the winner of Colombia-Panama, which will surely be Colombia, who have been pretty impressive. So, it's shaping up quite nicely. It's a shame the hosts are out.
But
that's how it goes.
Do you know what? The thing that will be disappointing for the US, for example, will be that it wasn't that long ago they were a kind of robust team who worked pretty hard and who would basically bang the ball long to Jose Altidore, right?
Yep.
And now they've got quite an interesting, exciting front three in Pulisic, Balogun and Timothy Weah, notwithstanding Weah's absolute brain fart against Panama. That is an exciting front three. And they've got experienced players throughout the team, a lot of whom who play in Europe, right? So it's disappointing from that point of view, particularly when they're at home. And given that Klinsmann had taken the US to the semi-final of the Copa America when 2016, when they got knocked out by Argentina.
Well, he's Jurgen Klinsmann.
And he didn't have a squad like this. Do you know what I mean? He probably wasn't. He probably never even visited the squad. So it can be done, is what I'm saying, and it wasn't done, and that's disappointing for them.
Yeah, something though that is more positive in terms of football that's being played in America at the moment, and I think we have to mention it, is that Fizzer's got Portland playing.
Has he got on pumping, has he?
I think so. He lost the derby to Seattle Sounders at sort of mid-May. But since then, 9 games, Andy, only 1 loss, 5 victories. They are flying. They are absolutely flying. It is glorious to see. And they were way down in sort of 11th, 12th. They're now up in 5th.
You know, like when...
It's all coming up Fizzer, baby.
You know when it's difficult to do these days, but when you've got a huge match and you're not able to see it because you've maybe got an agreement to go out with like family or friends, and so you have to sort of avoid all media, tell certain friends not to text you or whatever. I specifically avoid all the results of the Portland Timbers so I can come in and you can tell me about it.
Show some fucking respect.
What's also interesting is that free from the shackles, free from the tyranny of Fizzer, Inter Miami, now top of the league, flying.
There you go.
That's all they need to get him out of the way.
Cheers for watching another fantastic clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Make sure you click like on this video and subscribe to the channel, which means you will not miss a single upload.